Hello there and welcome. I'm astrologer Linda Wood, and with this video I'm bringing you my report for the full moon in Aquarius. Now this is happening on the 9th of August here in the UK at 7:54 a.m. in the morning. It may be that the timing of that is a little different if you are to the east or the west, or indeed the south of the UK. I don't think I mentioned then that this moon is on 17 degrees of Aquarius, which happens to be the degree of my natal moon. So this one's speaking to me quite personally, as often the planets will. So I think I say this most months, but we think of full moons as times of release, of times of things coming to a head, as time when there will be a light thrown onto topics and events, a time also of rather intense emotional response. But it's very much a finishing out, a coming to a completion from the new moon, which is just 2 weeks before. And then we have a 2-week phase where the energies are spiraling down to the dark of the moon and then the new moon again and the new beginnings. But of course, this moon, this full moon, and indeed the new moons that we've been having, they are like paragraphs in a much bigger unfolding story that we are going through. And so a lot of the themes between the full and the new moons keep re-emerging, keep resurfacing, keep regenerating. And so we are looking at those as the unfolding story written in the stars by the cosmos and by us too unfolds and unfolds in front of us. So yes, this is in some ways a release point and all of the things I said before, but it is also yet another stage, like the end of a paragraph only, in the great unfolding story of our times and of our evolution. All stories, including ours, have unfolding themes that keep repeating. And at this full moon, we have the moon in Aquarius, opposite the sun in Leo. And this picks up a theme that has been central for some time now, and a very important one. So let's look at what that is. Well, in Aquarius, we have this sense of the collective. We have this sense of the ideal, very much of the future. It's a very future-oriented sign. We also have the thinking function, the analytical function, highly developed, as well as insightful hits of simply knowing things, but knowing them through the mind that come through the sign of Aquarius. On the negative side, Aquarius is a fixed sign. And in its lower expressions, fixed thought can be fanatical dogmas. It can be clinging to ideologies that are simply not functioning. So we have to look at both sides there, just as we shall have to look at both sides of Leo, because it is Leo, the Leo sun, which is opposite to our moon in Aquarius. The moon in Aquarius can adapt to change, is actually at ease with change in many ways, even though it is a fixed sign. Part of the fixity is the fact that change is a constant. So if we're looking at Aquarius as the collective energy and the future, and indeed having quite a significance because we're leaving behind the age of Pisces and moving into the age of Aquarius, in fact are in the age of Aquarius, then this is our future trajectory and direction. But the full moon shining its light is opposite the sun in Leo. And so the sun in Leo speaks very much to the sovereignty of the individual, the need to be an individual, the need to express oneself, to live from the heart. Now, those are the positive sides of Leo. The more negative sides of Leo can be to elevate the self above everything else, egotism, an inflated sense of self-importance. I mean, you know, the positive and the negative is in all things. So we can look for all expressions happening in different places. But what we can say here is that we've got the individual and we've got the collective and we've got the heart with Leo. Leo is very much the feeling heart, and we have the mind with Aquarius, and they're opposite, so they're polar opposites, they're pulling against each other. Now, the big message with oppositions isn't to seesaw between one extreme, the other extreme, and back to the other. That isn't the way of wholeness and balance. What we're called to do is to integrate the two, is to find a way to synthesize those two opposing energies. In the UK chart for the full moon, there's a little bit of this synthesis already going on, because the moon in Aquarius is in the 5th house of the chart, and on the natural zodiac that would be the house of Leo, and the sun in Leo is in the 11th house, which, you know, in the natural zodiac would be the house where we would find Aquarius. So that, yeah, there's a little bit of not quite mutual reception. They're not planets, well, but the houses seem to have a bit of cross connection there, a thread that they're throwing. So we talked about the sun and moon opposition, but there are a couple of other oppositions in this chart that are quite tough ones that we need to take a look at. So the first one I would like to consider is the opposition between Mercury, our thinking, our communicating, and Mercury is in Leo. It isn't right close to the sun at all, but it is in the same sign of Leo. So Mercury in Leo is opposed by Pluto, which is in Aquarius, the same sign that our moon is in, but again, not conjunct the moon. So we have this opposition. Now, Mercury in Leo wants to express, needs to express, needs to be heard, really, wants to be heard. And obviously with Pluto opposing, there may be there restrictions on speaking our truth. There may be forces exerting pressure to stop people from expressing things that they really wish to express. Another way of looking at it could be that there is rather inflated, grandiose talk coming from that Leo Mercury, for purposes of power, for purposes of exerting power, to look big. That is another expression that may be going on there. And of course, there's no reason why both can't be going on. It doesn't have to be either or. There's plenty of things acting out in the world to accommodate more than one expression of an opposition. Another opposition that's happening is between Mars and the Saturn-Uranus, the Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries. Mars is in Libra, not a place where Mars feels particularly at home. Saturn and Neptune, we know, are in Aries, in the early degrees of Aries, where it's very much about shaping new beginnings, dissolving of the old, bringing the new into form. Trying to, this imaginal realm, bringing in what's possible and new, and the old being washed away. And of course, this is a source of discomfort to us. The old things, even if they haven't been good for us, are familiar to us. And their dissolving and disintegration can be disturbing, of course. But this is opposite Mars in Libra. Now, Mars in Libra, in the first house of this chart, I think is looking for a different expression. And I wonder if long term this is perhaps trying to seek some solutions, some compromises, some meeting places, some peace in some of the terrible conflicts that we have on the planet at the moment. Now, these are hard, and it's very difficult for people to think, oh my word, I thought we were evolving, entering new stage of consciousness, and there's all this horror in front of us. But I do want to say that unlike wars of the past, and there have always been wars, the wars that we have now, the horror of them, the grim reality of them, is in everybody's consciousness. There is no escaping from it. In the past, people could lie about wars. They could paint them as some sort of heroic adventure, some sort of, kung-ho victory type thing. This really isn't possible now. We are all very conscious of just the raw human suffering, and all feeling the despair from that, and the fact that this cannot be a way to be continuing as a species. This has never been so evident. Wars in the past have been equally, if not more, horrific, if less mechanized, but they have been reported in a very mediated, curated way. I'm not saying that there's still not points of view in the way things are presented in the media, but I think there are so many images coming to us now from so many independent sources that one thing we cannot escape is the horror. And our full moon is throwing light on both of the issues I've just been talking about, both the suppression of people being able to tell the truth, of the truth being suppressed and hidden away, and also the fact that we need to create another way of being, because the horror of the bloodshed and wars and conflicts that we have is present in everyone's mind. It's very, very with the whole collective. And We are feeling it across the polarity of the sun and the moon in our hearts and in our minds. That's very much being illuminated at this point. So we can see a possible signature here of power trying to cling on, to suppress. And we know some of the horrors that are going on in the world. What's interesting is that, as I said, Mars is in Libra, and Libra is very much a sign to do with balance and justice. And our moon in Aquarius is conjunct Pallas Athena, which is, she is also a representation of justice. And so I think that there's a real shout out here for the truth and for justice to be served and for the higher spiritual laws to come into play here. I think that is very clear. And some of those revelations could well be about where people have been harmed, hurt and damaged because Chiron in Aries is forming a square to Pluto, which is opposing Mercury in Leo. And so I think that this is the revealing of cover-ups for things that have damaged and harmed people, and the fact that the truth must out on those. The way I'm seeing it is it's not going to be possible to hide from the truths, either in our personal lives or in our public lives. But let's remember that Uranus is in the sign of Gemini, and Uranus will be about freedom of expression there. It will be about freedom of communication. It will not be wanting to tolerate barriers and boundaries of any kind. So I think there will be things coming out, coming to light. It won't be possible to suppress things. Ultimately, they will be revealed. Hard sometimes with all of this going on, all of the turbulence around us happening, to believe that things are unfolding as they should. And yet there's every indication from the harmonious aspects between the outer planets, which are the significators of times of change, that this is exactly the case, that things are unfolding as they must really. Back to this idea of everything, the old machine, the old mechanisms breaking apart, and the cage door is opening so that the bird can fly. I think that that's very much the case. Now, it may be, and almost certainly will be, that we will all, in our personal lives as well, be hit by some of these influences to greater or lesser degrees, obviously, depending where the planets, the transiting planets, are in relation to our natal charts. There could be revelations for us. There could be situations in which we personally are feeling we cannot express our truth and that power is exerted over us, or where for one reason or another it is not possible at this point in time for us to speak our truths, and there can sometimes be good reasons for that. But what we're all being called to do is to honour who we are, thinking of that sun in Leo opposite the illuminating moon in Aquarius. So we're being called to look at our own inner world, to look at our own prejudices, our own issues, and look at how we can work with those. It means taking responsibility for our own thoughts, for being responsible for ourselves, for our beliefs, and for returning to ourselves as the point of reference. The times where we can put our trust into others, into those who traditionally have had powers like governments and institutions, those times are crumbling. Everything there is changing. But we are the fixed point at the hub of the wheel. And the more we can go back to ourselves and our own sovereignty, the better. One of the ways in which you can see a kind of cosmic timing in all of this is in the retrograde motion of some of the outer planets. Neptune and Saturn are already retrograde. Uranus will go retrograde in November, and they will both go back, Saturn and Neptune back into Pisces, and Uranus back into Taurus. And in some ways, what we are in now, as I've said before, is a preview. It's the trailer for the big movie that happens in 2026. Personally, in our lives, we may be, you may be hatching lots of plans, you may have lots of ideas, you may have lots of projects and ways that you want to move forward. But with these retrogrades, we're being given, as I see it, it's sort of a time of grace. It's a time to look again at things, review things, check details, get things right, think about things. I think this is going to be very important because we expected, didn't we, once Uranus went into Gemini, everything would go 1,000 miles an hour and there'd be no chance to grasp things and look back and get things right. But these retrogrades, I think, are giving us a stay of grace, a time of pause, a time when we can look again at things, go back to things, revise, review, think again about things. And I think that that's very precious. I think it's precious to us as a species before we enter these permanent changes in 2026, but also as individuals. I think it's a time that, we may be feeling frustrated because we can't move ahead in the way we want to. But I think we'll look back and think, thank goodness I didn't, because this is so much better. This is a much better way. Or I see things in so much more detail and clarity now than I did. So I think that's a positive aspect here. And I think that ultimately the future is unfolding as it must, and that we are required to have courage and also to have trust. There's a rare and rather wonderful configuration of planets, of aspects between planets in this chart, which is known as the mystic rectangle. And I do believe it is as the signature that we are being held, we are being helped, because we're moving to a reality that is much bigger than we've ever imagined it might be. But this is another full moon in the unfolding story of the cosmos, of the planets, and there are going to be more in the story that's unfolding around us. And I think it doesn't do to give in to the fear, the negativity, to the distortions that are going on around us. I think we have to really examine our own hearts and minds going back, what we're thinking, what we're feeling is of paramount importance. And it is within us that there is that tuning fork for truth. And we should stick with that and not too much attention to powers outside of us. I think it's all back to number one, really. So I guess we look for the beauty and for the joy which runs through even the darkest of times, and take heart and celebrate that. I wish you well. I wish you a good full moon, and I will be with you again soon. So I'll say goodbye for now.